3 minutes ago, devastating news details about Mark Harmon. For nearly 50 years, Mark Harmon has been one of the most trusted faces on American television and one of the most guarded men in Hollywood. He built a career on playing steady, unshakable men, while quietly carrying a family history full of custody battles, grief, and backstage warfare that he almost never spoke about in public. Today we're going behind the silence to look at the moments Mark Harmon fought hardest to keep out of the headlines, and why, after everything, he's finally stepping back in front of the camera. A courtroom fight nobody expected. In the mid-1980s, Mark Harmon's older sister, Kristen, was living through a nightmare. She had married rock and roll icon Ricky Nelson in 1963, becoming part of one of the most recognizable families in American entertainment, first as a regular on The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, and later as the mother of 4 children with Nelson. But the marriage collapsed under the weight of Nelson's relentless touring schedule, and by the time the couple divorced in the early 1980s, Kristen was already struggling with drug and alcohol dependency. When Ricky Nelson died in a plane crash in December 1985, that struggle deepened, and her youngest son, 12-year-old Sam, was the one left in the middle of it. Mark and his new wife, actress Pam Dauber, watched the situation unravel and decided they couldn't stay on the sidelines. In 1987, they took the extraordinary step of filing for custody of Sam, arguing in court that Kristen was not capable of caring for him. It was by any measure a brutal decision. Suing your own sister for her child is not something a family does lightly, and played out in open court with testimony about drug use, psychiatric evaluations, and even allegations that Pam herself had used cocaine years earlier on the set of Mork and Mindy, a claim she firmly denied under oath. The case dragged the entire family into the tabloids at a moment when Kristen was also completing a rehabilitation program. According to people close to the case, Sam himself told the court he didn't want to go home to his mother, but by August 1987, both sides reached a settlement. Kristen retained custody, Mark and Pam were granted structured visitation, and everyone agreed to enter family counseling together. Kristen left the courthouse arm in arm with her brother, telling reporters she believed the family could heal. In the years that followed, by Sam's own account, the relationship between mother and son did improve. Kristen Harmon Nelson died of a heart attack in 2018, and while the custody fight left real scars, those closest to the family say the 2 siblings eventually found their way back to something resembling peace. Growing up in a legend's shadow. To understand why Mark Harmon guards his privacy so fiercely, you have to go back to the house he grew up in. His father, Tom Harmon, wasn't just a football player. He won the Heisman Trophy in 1940, served as a decorated fighter pilot in World War II, and later became a well-known network sports broadcaster. To the country, Tom Harmon was the picture of American heroism. At home, by most accounts, he was a demanding, competitive presence who expected excellence from his children. Mark's mother, Elise Knox, had her own public life as a 1940s film actress and fashion model, which meant the entire family understood early on how quickly public image could be built, and how easily it could be torn down. Growing up as the son of 2 famous parents, watching every misstep get magnified by the public, shaped Mark into someone who kept his emotions close and his private life closer. That instinct would follow him through the rest of his life, long after he'd left his father's house. From the football field to a struggling actor's life. Rather than lean on his father's name, Mark chased his own version of achievement. In 1972, he transferred to UCLA and became the starting quarterback for the Bruins, running the team through 2 seasons that included a stunning upset over the defending national champion Nebraska Cornhuskers in his very first start. He graduated with a communications degree and was honored with the National Football Foundation's National Scholar Athlete Award in 1973, proof to a family that measured everything by achievement that he could succeed on multiple fronts at once. Then he did something that shocked almost everyone who knew him. Instead of pursuing a football career, he walked away from the sport entirely to try acting. It did not go smoothly at first. Harmon spent years taking small guest roles on shows like Adam, 12, and Police Woman, and supported himself with manual labor jobs in the meantime. It would take nearly a decade of that grind before steadier work, including a well-regarded turn on St. Elsewhere, started to build his reputation as a serious dramatic actor. The night he ran toward the fire. Long before most viewers knew him as Special Agent Gibbs, Mark Harmon became a real-life rescuer. In January 1996, a car carrying 2 teenagers lost control outside his Brentwood home, slammed into a wall, flipped, and burst into flames. One teenager escaped with minor injuries. The other, 16-year-old Colin Specht, was trapped upside down inside the burning wreckage. Pam Dauber spotted the fire and called for help, but Mark didn't wait for emergency crews. He ran to his garage, grabbed a sledgehammer, and broke through the car's window with his bare hands protected by nothing but instinct, then pulled the teenager free moments before the vehicle was fully engulfed. What followed said as much about Harmon's character as the rescue itself. Rather than accepting the media attention that came his way, he actively avoided it, declining major interviews and insisting the focus stay on the recovering teenagers rather than himself. It was a defining, largely unpublicized moment, real courage, met with a deliberate refusal to turn it into a headline. A marriage built on boundaries. That instinct to protect his private life extended most powerfully to his marriage. Mark Harmon and Pam Dauber married in March 1987. Not long after the custody case, and by most accounts they made an early, deliberate choice to keep their household almost entirely out of the press. Dauber, who had become a household name playing the title role in Mork and Mindy, largely stepped back from acting to raise their two sons, Sean and Ty. The couple rarely discussed each other in interviews, kept their children away from red carpets and paparazzi, and avoided the kind of social media presence that defines most celebrity families today. That level of discipline is rare in an industry built on visibility, and it came at a cost: fewer public appearances, fewer industry connections, less of the constant self-promotion that fuels most Hollywood careers. But it also gave them something most celebrity marriages never get: nearly 4 decades together, largely undisturbed by the tabloid cycles that swallow so many of their peers. The dog bite that divided a set. Mark Harmon's discipline off camera didn't shield him from conflict on set. In October 2016, a dog he brought regularly to the NCIS set bit a crew member badly enough to require 15 stitches. His co-star Polly Parrott, a longtime animal welfare advocate, objected strongly to the dog returning afterward. According to reporting from multiple entertainment outlets, the disagreement escalated into a genuine rift between the two lead actors, one severe enough that, by Parrott's final season on the show, production reportedly arranged for the two stars to film on separate days entirely, stitching their scenes together in the edit so viewers wouldn't notice they were never actually in the same room. When Parrott departed the series in 2018, she posted a series of pointed messages on social media referencing feeling unsafe on set, later saying publicly that she was frightened of returning because of the dynamic with Harmon. Harmon, true to form, never responded publicly. A show executive producer later confirmed the basic outline of the incident to press, describing a situation where the dog kept coming with Harmon, even after the bite, and where Parrott ultimately felt the environment wasn't safe for her anymore. It remains one of the only public controversies Harmon has ever been directly connected to, and even then, he simply never engaged with it. Walking away from Gibbs. By 2021, after nearly 2 decades in the role that defined his career, Mark Harmon made his own quiet exit from NCIS. His character, Leroy Jethro Gibbs, left the show early in season 19, deciding to remain in Alaska rather than return to Washington. For years afterward, fans speculated about health problems or behind-the-scenes trouble. Harmon eventually addressed it directly, and the real explanation was far simpler than the rumors. He was tired. "I think for the longest time, I was just tired," he said in one interview, pointing to years of grueling schedules that started with a 22-hour first day of filming back in 2003. He has never described the decision as a health crisis. By his own account, it was about wanting a natural, honest ending for a character he'd spent 2 decades building, and about finally reclaiming some of the time he'd given to the show. Losing the people who built the world with him. The years around that exit brought real personal loss. In September 2016, NCIS showrunner Gary Glassberg, a close creative partner to Harmon for years, died suddenly in his sleep at 50 years old, a loss that reportedly hit the production hard. Then, in September 2023, David McCallum, who had played Dr. Donald Ducky Mallard opposite Harmon for 2 decades, died at 90. Harmon, consistent with everything we know about how he handles grief, didn't do a public press tour or a string of tribute interviews. He offered a brief, sincere statement and largely processed both losses away from cameras, the same way he's handled nearly everything difficult in his life. Coming back to Gibbs. What makes Mark Harmon's story different from so many long-running television leads is what happened after he stepped away. In 2024, CBS launched a prequel series, NCIS Origins, built around a younger version of Gibbs, an idea that reportedly originated with Harmon's own son, Sean, who had played young Gibbs in flashback scenes on the original series. Mark came back not as the lead actor, but as narrator and executive producer, working closely with Austin Stoll, the actor cast to play the younger version of the character he'd spent 18 years building. And now, in the summer of 2026, comes the twist almost nobody expected. Mark Harmon is stepping back in front of the camera. CBS has confirmed that in the upcoming third season of NCIS, Origins, Harmon will appear as Gibbs in every single episode, woven into a present-day storyline tied to the character's 1990s past at Camp Pendleton. It's his first true on-screen, season-long acting role since he walked away from a flagship series in 2021, a full-circle moment nobody could have predicted when he quietly said goodbye to Gibbs in that Alaska sunset 5 years ago. The real cost of staying quiet. Look at the full picture, and a pattern becomes clear. Every time Mark Harmon's life handed him something painful, a family torn apart by addiction, a bitter feud with a co-star, the exhausting grind of playing the same character for 2 decades, the deaths of people who shaped his career, he responded the same way. Quietly, privately, without turning his pain into content for anyone else to consume. In an industry built on oversharing, that restraint has made him something increasingly rare. He never let the noise define him. And maybe that's exactly why, after everything, audiences are still willing to follow him back into Gibbs' world one more time. If there's one thing Mark Harmon's life proves, it's that real strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's just showing up, doing the work, and letting the results speak for themselves, decades later, when almost everyone had stopped expecting it.